And good morning and welcome to UPN Focus. I'm your host, Milt Thompson. And you know, there are a lot of organizations in our city that profess to help others. There is one I know that is really in the business of helping others, and that is the real MCCOY, represented by its president, John Brandon. John, welcome to our show.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Now, the real MCCOY is a little bit of a misleading statement, but something that has become fairly familiar to others by that name.
Right.
They may not know very much about the Marion County Council on Youth.
Commission on Youth.
Commission, Council. See, I told you. MCCOY, I know MCCOY better than do that.
That's right.
Tell us about MCCOY.
Well,
Its history.
I can give you a little bit of history and tell you what we're about today. Essentially, MCCOY got started back in about the late 80s. The Community Service Council of the United Way did a study at the behest of the city administration at the time, who wanted to look at how youth services were being delivered throughout Marion County to see if they were being effective, if they were reaching young people and really meeting their needs. And one of the things that the study recommended was that while we seem to have a lot of youth services available throughout the Indianapolis area, lots of times they weren't working together. And so they recommended there be started some sort of organization which would help youth serving agencies work together, which would set some goals and some plans for the community at large, so that every young person would have the opportunities and the supports that they needed to grow up well. MCCOY initially got started as a city-county organization, and that's why it had the name Marion County Commission on Youth. It's got that governmental kind of sound to it. But in the early 1990s, it got out of government and became an independent, not-for-profit organization with essentially the same mission. To work as a kind of a behind-the-scenes convener, facilitator, coordinating kind of agency that helps make sure that our community is doing what it needs to do to help all of its young people grow up well.
Sounds like to me your professional background led you to become the president of MCCOY. And we go back a ways.
That's right,
perhaps you want to tell our audience a little bit what presented this opportunity for you to lead this commission.
I spent about 8 or 9 years with an organization that Milt's very familiar with, the Big Brothers of Greater Indianapolis, working with them as a caseworker and also as a professional developer of matches between young men and volunteer men in our community. So I had a real concern about young people's growth and development. And so when the opportunity to take over MCCOY as it was going through its reorganization presented itself to me, I said, sure, why not? Let's give it a try. And here we are 8 years later, and we're going strong.
Well, when I look at our philanthropic community, there seems to have been not only from the 70s and 80s and really late 80s when MCCOY's arrival on the scene occurred, but even now into the 90s and off into this new millennium, we see that there has been significant interest in the 80s, at-risk youth,
right.
Opportunities for youth, concern relative to the educational system and our application of our skill sets to youth so that they can ultimately become productive
right.
kind of citizens. And we seem to have a breadth of knowledge about the problems, and we seem to have a significant number of nonprofit organizations that have service mission their youth. Lots of money from our legislature as well as from our local government enterprises dumping money into these enterprises, yet when we read and look around and comparatively at statistics, our children aren't doing nearly as well as they perhaps could. Analyze perhaps that problem for me if you can, and then maybe address what MCCOY's role and responsibilities are vis-a-vis that.
Well, I think that one of the things that if we look at our history is that as a community we have at various points in time mobilized ourselves. When a problem presents itself, we kind of all rise up and we come up with the resources and we really do something about it. You probably remember back in the early 90s that when the concern justifiably was raised about the high infant mortality rate in our community. Our community organized itself, mobilized itself, came up with resources and really stepped up because that problem presented itself and began to do things to really increase the chances that children in our community were going to be born healthy and stay healthy. Unfortunately, lots of times what we tend to do is we wait for a problem and then we throw resources and money at it and try to solve it. I think that there's been a profound shift, at least in the youth development field, is precisely to begin to look at positive youth development. And that is to do the sorts of things and provide the sorts of programs and services that will help young people from the start develop well, to help them to, as they're going through the process of growing up, making sure that they have the supports that they need to grow up well. Instead of waiting till a young person begins to have problems, have the sorts of programs and services available to them that will help them make good choices rather than have to remediate when they make bad choices because they've had no guidance.
Why did I guess I'm asking a question to you that probably we should ask to other people, but why did our political leaders suggest or that there ought to be a commission in Marion County to look at kind of being a conduit agency for other youth-serving organizations? Why didn't they just simply say, you youth-serving organizations, here's money, do bigger and better and with what it is you do?
Well, because each of the individual serving agencies are focused on perhaps providing a particular kind of service. For example, you have Big Brothers, and their service is to provide mentoring relationships, which we know young people really benefit from. You have the school systems, and their focus is on education. You may have someone else providing health services, and et cetera. The whole idea behind MCCOY was to make sure that we could coordinate those services so that they were working together with one another, so that each young person would have available to them that wide array of supports that they need to grow up well.
Are organizations members of MCCOY? Are they part of a consortium for which they might be able to gain information? What is the functional service of MCCOY to these youth organizations? We
regularly convene groups of organizations. We have on every other monthly basis, we have a meeting that we call a Youth Service Providers Council, which is essentially open to anybody who's involved in youth service in the community. And those meetings gather folks together from varieties of backgrounds, give them an opportunity to interact with each other, to hear about the things that MCCOY is doing. We put out a newsletter on a quarterly basis which really focuses on opportunities where agencies can gather themselves together around a particular project to really make something happen. As an example, we've just become involved in a project through a contract with the Indianapolis Private Industry Council focusing on developing opportunities for youth entrepreneurship. We know that young people, especially young people in the age group, say 13, 14, 15, before they can actually get into the workforce, but if you talk to a young person, you say, what do you want? They want a job. They want to make money. But because most of them can't get into the normal sort of working situation, we begun to look at ways that perhaps they can learn the skills and get the supports to actually start their own businesses. Youth entrepreneurship in some parts of our country has really caught on like a wildfire. And we've been fortunate working with the PIC and also with some community partners to start some training curricula for youth entrepreneurs.
Sounds like you might have a tiger by the tail.
Who knows?
With youth-serving organizations. And you really indicated that there's some research. You say you know that people are going to be better by having attention paid as well as resources directed to it.
Right.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about that right after these important messages. Welcome back to UPN Focus. We've been talking with John Brandon, who's the president of MCCOY, which is the Marion County Commission on Youth. I got it right this time. Which essentially is a convening organization of other youth-serving organizations, its own standing nonprofit organization. You were talking about one of the programs that you're involved with teen entrepreneurship.
Right.
There's a critical concern not only from governments but from private sources and otherwise about our educational system.
Right.
Tell us, if you can, a little bit about the interventions, if you will, that MCCOY is involved with our local school systems.
Well, we have been, our initial work with the school systems began 3 or 4 years ago. If you recall, there was an outcry, I guess is a good way to put it, for young people who were being expelled. And when a young person is expelled from school, they're essentially on their own. You know, they're not allowed on school grounds. The school wasn't able to offer them any sorts of services. And we know from research that says that when a young person is expelled, the length of the expulsion will generally indicate whether or not they'll actually come back to school. And a lot of young people, when they are expelled, unless there's some sort of strong support in place, oftentimes can find themselves making some bad choices because they got too much free time on their hands, and daytime TV doesn't keep their attention too much. And so working together with some of the community organizations, we started something that we coined, gave the term the Community Academy. And we really focused on gathering together some of these young folks and really working with them on some remediation, because a lot of them needed that in terms of keeping up with their schoolwork, but really focusing on life skills, because that's what got them kicked out of school was not because they didn't do their work. What got them kicked out of school was maybe they weren't very well able to manage their anger, or maybe they weren't able to focus on doing what they were supposed to do when they were supposed to be doing it. And so we began this program, especially working together with the Boys and Girls Club and the Children's Museum and some other community partners. It became so successful that now IPS has kind of taken that in itself. It now runs several of these community academies for young people of both of high school age and also middle school. And it has been successful because it keeps young people connected. And that's, we know how important that is keeping young people connected to positive activities and to positive people is generally going to have a positive impact on them.
The issue with schools is often seasonal.
Right.
When youngsters are in school, there's more supervision,
right.
And there's obviously research that after school is when problems exist, and
right.
so there have become now a group of programs that kind of jump in on the after-school kind
program.
of
Right.
bandwagon. But that extended vacation,
right.
when you're not in year-round schools over the summertime, lead to problems that are non-education related, but perhaps now even juvenile justice system
right.
related. Your interventions with juvenile justice, summertime activities, and otherwise?
We have worked real hard at trying to help young people and to help families become aware of what's available out there. I think I said early on that Indianapolis has a wide array of youth service programs and opportunities. But we did some surveys and some focus groups with parents and with young people, and lots of times they were saying to us they didn't know what even existed. And so we have done two things especially to get program information out to folks. We have a phone line that's available for people to call in and get information. But even more effective is that we publish twice a year a youth activity directory, which essentially there's a school year edition and there's a summer edition, because in the summertime the youth serving programs step up their programming. They know that there are the need for more opportunities for young people for positive programming. So there are more camps, there are more Boys and Girls Clubs activities, all those sorts of things are available. And so these youth activity directories, which we put out about 10,000 copies of each one, is a way to inform young people and inform parents of the sorts of opportunities and programs that are available to them in the summer and on a year-round basis. One of the things that we really like about the activity directory is not only just does it have activities listed, but there's a section in there also on volunteer opportunities for young people, because we know young people love to get involved in volunteer opportunities. Indianapolis as a community has a history of strong volunteer involvement, and young people are no different. If given the opportunity, they turn out and they contribute their time and their effort to worthy causes.
You mentioned earlier, obviously surveys, and prior to that,
right.
you mentioned that there are folks that you know that if they have mentoring services are going to turn out better. That indicates to me that there's a research component to MCCOY relative to the kinds of information that will induce volunteers as well as other service providers right. to do what they do better, as well as those who are obviously going to fund those activities
right.
To be able to support them. Tell us about the research component, what it is you're trying to get, what information is helpful and useful, and your mechanics for getting that.
There is a the whole field of youth development is really just beginning to establish itself and developing some research and some knowledge based on what we know works for young people. And so it's been our attempt over the last several years to begin to try to pull that together, to make it available to the community so that they know that these programs are they're not just glorified babysitting. When a young person goes and gets involved in a positive youth development program, they're really getting the sorts of things that they need, which will help them grow up well. They're going to learn skills. They're going to learn how to be leaders. They're going to learn how to be responsible for themselves. They're going to learn how to manage time, all those sorts of things that all of us need to learn if we're going to be successful as adults. Another effort that we're doing in that area of gathering the information together is also looking at training opportunities, especially for those who work in the field of youth development. There have been developed on a national level some training curriculum for youth workers, and we're working with a couple of national organizations, most notably the Center for Youth Development, to see what we can do about bringing those training opportunities to town so that those who work in the field of youth development, both professional and volunteer, can gain from that knowledge.
So there's a set of norms out there.
Right.
So that if I'm really reluctant to be a volunteer because I may not know, other than my own child rearing,
right.
What kind of experiences would be necessary to actually have a positive impact on children, that we can learn and need not be skeptical of our own abilities relative to accomplishing that.
Right, and I think that can also give confidence to parents. If they know that the youth workers who will be interacting with their children are well-trained, knowledgeable, skilled people, they can feel good and comfortable about having their child participate in the programs of that organization.
John, in my experiences, several youth-serving organizations in our community, many of the challenges are not the resources or the good, willing people to be able to help. Sometimes it's, you say, knowledge of the programs. But once there's knowledge of the program, because we now have so many single-parent homes, we have nutrition issues, health and services kinds of issues. How do we, which really begs the question of transportation, how do people get to these various programs? If you can give a short word on that.
Transportation is a major barrier for a lot of young people. One thing that we have done along those lines is working with, at least with Metro locally. Initially, we started out with a summer youth bus pass, where a young person could buy for a one-time cost a bus pass, which would allow him or her to ride Metro all summer. Over the course of several years working with them, we now have an arrangement with Indigo where a young person can ride Indigo buses at half fare. All they need to do is to go to the Indigo Transit store, and they pay a $2 one-time fee. They get an identification card, and they show that when they ride the buses.
So MCCOY has the ability.
Well, Indigo has that.
Indigo,
right.
But to rally those resources to be able to offer these. I want to find out a little bit more about the resources, and we're going to do that right after these important words. And welcome back to UPN Focus. We've been talking with John Brandon, president of MCCOY, Marion County Commission on Youth. If this were an hour show, I would really have this down, I think.
By the end.
We were talking about some of the coordinating efforts relative to getting people to services with the transportation elements of that. Obviously now, not being a government, state-supported agency or a city-supported agency or otherwise, being your own nonprofit, part of your job is as a development person.
That's right.
You're knocking on doors, you're writing grant proposals. I don't know if you have membership programs or otherwise, but tell us a little bit about your board of directors and the structure of the organization and how it's funded, and then how people can get involved.
Okay. Essentially, we have a board of directors made up of 27 folks from the community who are as reflective of the community as 27 folks can be. It includes young people. We are committed to to walking the walk and talking the talk. If we're going to be advocates for young people, we want to make sure that young people are on our board of directors and they serve as full voting members of the board. We're essentially funded from a variety of sources. Our major supporters are the local foundations, the Lilly Endowment, the Indianapolis Community Foundation, several family foundations, a variety of folks who have participated in helping us become what we are. We also receive some contractual income, both from the United Way of Central Indiana as well as from the private industry councils I mentioned with the Youth Entrepreneurship Program. So we as well as donations from folks in the community who have heard about us and like what we're doing and keep us going. We don't, we produce this directory, as I refer to. We don't charge for that. That comes out of the general operating funds that we are able to attract, as well as you said, grant proposals. We're always looking for folks who are looking to support us in the work that we do on behalf of young people. As far as if folks have an interest in getting involved in some way, probably their first thing is to give me a call. And I'm at 921-1288. And I'd be willing to talk with them and figure out how we could connect them.
So not only are you providing conduit services that support other youth serving organizations, you actually have some direct services and service programs and opportunities that support other organizations like United Way, Private Industry Council, relative to that occurrence. Volunteers, size of staff?
There's a staff of us. There's a total of 5 of us. And as far as volunteers, essentially, because we don't do a lot of direct service program, mostly the volunteer work are the members of the board of directors. We do have a few folks who have contributed some efforts toward particular projects.
So John Brandon has come in his professional career with a heart and dedication towards the service of young people to the management of an organization that has as its outcome the mission of serving young people in our community. That's MCCOY, Marion County Commission on Youth.
We want every young person in our community to be, by the time they reach adulthood, to be economically self-sufficient, to have the ability to build good relationships, and to become a contributing member of the community. And if we could get that to happen, we'd have a dynamic community.
And they'll take advantage of that, just like they will of our community calendar.
Here are some more events in our area for you to focus on. The Indiana Extension Homemakers Association, in partnership with the Cooperative Extension Service and Purdue University, is offering 12 $500 scholarships to qualified candidates. If you're 25 or older and want to complete your education or upgrade your vocational skills, call the Grant County Cooperative Extension Office for more information. If you're a runner and plan to participate in this year's mini marathon, the Southport Presbyterian Church is hosting an open training group. Runners of all levels of experience are invited to train each Tuesday at 5:15 and Saturday at 7 a.m. The Central Indiana Broadcasters Job Fair will be held Saturday, February 3rd from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Sheraton Indianapolis North Hotel. The job fair is free and will feature a panel of broadcast professionals to answer your questions. Don't miss this chance to learn more about your career in broadcasting. We want to hear from you. Send your event information 3 weeks in advance to be part of the UPN 23 community calendar.
And thank you, John Brandon, for representing MCCOY here on UPN Focus. We'll see you right here this time next week.